Hello students, in this video we will start with the second chapter in Science 2, that is Life Process in Living Organism Part 1. Now life process defines a living organism. In living organism there are different processes which takes place, and for these processes we have specific organs also and different organ systems. Now specific process like excretion, digestion, reproduction, cell division, respiration and so on are these life processes, and because of these processes we survive. In this video, we are going to learn about two life processes, that is respiration and cell division. So let's start. So overall in our body, different systems are present, and for these systems to work properly, we require continuous source of energy. We eat food to get energy in the form of carbohydrates, proteins and lipids, which then breaks down to produce energy. Along with food, we require oxygen also. So our body requires oxygen and foodstuff to produce energy. So to produce energy, foodstuff and oxygen need to be transported. So this transport is done by the circulatory system. The foodstuff and oxygen is transported to the cell by our circulatory system. And from each life process, energy is produced. Now food that the plant prepare is by photosynthesis. They use the process of photosynthesis to prepare their food. They utilize some food for themselves, and the remaining is stored in the parts like leaf, fruit, stem, roots, etc. And we get different nutrients from them. And from those nutrients we get energy. Now can you all tell what type of nutrient do we get from the food? So we get different nutrients like carbohydrates, protein, fats, vitamins, minerals from the food that we eat. Let us first study about carbohydrates. This is the first source of energy, and we obtain carbohydrate from the food like potatoes, fruits, wheat, rice, etc. And from carbohydrates, we get 4 kilocalories of energy per gram of carbohydrates. So you can imagine that per gram of carbohydrates will give you 4 kilocalorie of energy. Now carbohydrates are the readily source of energy. That is, whenever energy is required, our body requires carbohydrates to produce energy. So let us learn how this energy is produced. There are different steps also in this production of energy. So in our body, different systems work together and produce energy. One of the system is the respiratory system. The organs involved in the respiratory system is mouth, nose, nasal cavity, throat, larynx, then we have esophagus, then we have trachea, we have lungs, we have diaphragm, and we have bronchi also. So all these organs, they work together, and diffusion of gases takes place. That we have learned about the diffusion of gases through the help of alveoli. Diffusion of gases takes place. We have learned about this. So from this, that is with the help of respiratory system, energy is produced. Now in our body, different type of respiration takes place. So let's learn about the two different types of respiration. Now respiration occurs at two levels. We have two levels of respiration, that is cellular level and body level. So you can say there are two types of respiration, cellular respiration and body level respiration. At cellular respiration, the food stuff, that is carbohydrates, fats, proteins that we consume are oxidized. Now it can be oxidized with help of oxygen or without help of oxygen. So oxygen can be present or oxygen cannot be present, and the foodstuffs are oxidized. At body level respiration, the oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged between our body and our surrounding. So this is the two types of respiration. One is the cellular respiration and the other is the body level respiration. Now cellular respiration is also of two types, that is aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Now aerobic respiration which involves oxygen. So this respiration will perform in the presence of oxygen. So whenever oxygen is present, our body performs aerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration on the other hand is performed when oxygen is not present. So whenever our body is not having oxygen, that time we perform anaerobic respiration. So this is the two types of cellular respiration: aerobic respiration in presence of oxygen, anaerobic respiration, that is in the absence of oxygen. Now main source of energy we get is from carbohydrates. That is the food that we consume, from that we get carbohydrates. Now carbohydrates has various types. For example, glucose, fructose, sucrose, etc. So in our body, glucose, which is a type of carbohydrate, is oxidized in the cells. The energy that we get after the oxidation is in the form of ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate. Now it can be oxidized by two methods, that is aerobic and anaerobic. So in aerobic respiration, so first we will learn about aerobic respiration. In aerobic respiration, glucose is oxidized in three steps. So what are those three steps? That is, first is glycolysis, second is citric acid cycle, that we also call as TCA, tricarboxylic acid cycle, or ETC, that is called as electron chain transfer reaction. Now here are two enzymes. First is NADH2, second is FADH2. Now these two enzymes are formed in the cell during the entire process, and NADH2 and FADH2 later on breaks down to produce energy in the form of ATP. So the full form of NADH2 is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. Full form of NADH2 is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, and the full form of FADH2 is flavin adenine dinucleotide. I'll repeat, flavin adenine dinucleotide. Now these two enzymes, they will break and then energy will be produced. Now energy that is produced in the form of ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate. So how it is made? It is made up of adenine, a ribose sugar and a 3-phosphate group. So that is why it is called as adenosine and triphosphate, that is 3 phosphate groups are present in the ATP. Now ATP is the energy currency, that is we get energy in the form of ATP. But how do we, if we utilize any form of energy, so how energy is released? So as we have seen, this is the formula of ATP, that is adenine group is there, ribose group is there and 3 bonds of phosphate is there. That is why we call it as adenosine triphosphate. Now adenine triphosphate, that is ATP, gets converted to ADP, that is adenosine diphosphate. Now why it gets converted is the bond, that is 3 bond which is there of the phosphate. 3 bond of phosphate groups break. The one of the bond from the phosphate group breaks and the energy is released. So as the energy is released, the ATP, it is the full energy, the battery was full. Now as you have utilized the energy, it gets converted to ADP, that is the battery is now finished. So that is why it is called as adenosine diphosphate, and this is how the energy is released, that is with some work or when we are doing some work, this is how the energy is released from our body. Now the aerobic respiration takes place in the cell, and it takes place in the cytoplasm and the mitochondria of the cell. The first step in aerobic respiration is to produce energy with the help of glycolysis. So glycolysis is the first step in aerobic respiration, and glycolysis occur in cytoplasm. So what happens is a molecule of glucose is oxidized and 2 molecules of pyruvic acid, 2 molecules of ATP and 2 molecules of NADH2 and water is formed. Then the pyruvic acid which is formed, again it is converted to acetyl coenzyme A, and during this conversion we get 2 molecules of NADH2 and 2 carbon dioxide molecule. So indirectly we are getting NADH2, ATP, and NADH2 enzyme can later on be converted to ATP. So now acetyl coenzyme A, which was produced in glycolysis, it enters into the mitochondria. So now acetyl coenzyme A has entered the mitochondria, and now here our second step starts, that is the citric acid cycle or Krebs cycle, or you can also call it as TCA, that is tricarboxylic acid cycle. Now here you can see fatty acids are also given. So sometimes if carbohydrate is less in our body, that time fatty acids can be converted to acetyl coenzyme A and energy can be produced. So we can also get energy from protein as well, that we will be learning in the further video. So acetyl coenzyme A, that is formed. Now this acetyl coenzyme A, so the acetyl part which is there, that part is oxidized in this cyclic process, and we get molecules of carbon dioxide, we also get water molecules, and NADH2 and FADH2 is formed. So in this process again NADH2 and FADH2 is formed. This is called as the citric acid cycle or the tricarboxylic acid cycle. The next step is ETC, that is electron transfer chain reaction. Now ETC also takes place in mitochondria. In this, the molecules of NADH2 and FADH2, which were formed in glycolysis and TCA, participate in the electron transfer chain reaction. So in this electron transfer chain reaction, we finally get our ATP. So now one NADH2 gives 3 molecules of ATP. So that means if 2 NADH2 is formed, so we will get 6 molecules of ATP. So remember this, from 1 NADH2 you get 3 molecules of ATP, and from 1 FADH2 we get 2 molecules of ATP. So if 2 molecules of FADH2 is formed, it will give 4 molecules of ATP, and if 3 molecules of NADH2 is formed, NADH2 gives 3 molecules. So if 3 NADH2 is formed, so we will get 9 molecules of ATP, and from 3 FADH2 what we will get? We will get 6 molecules of ATP. So this is how ATP is produced through cellular respiration. Now along with ATP, now ATP is the energy. So along with energy, we also produce carbon dioxide and water. So in the cell, along with energy, carbon dioxide and water is also formed. So we get our energy from our food, and the food that we consume are broken down into carbohydrate, fats, proteins and other things. That energy that we get, it is in the form of ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate, and this energy we utilize for our metabolism. While utilizing this energy, some form of carbon dioxide and water that was produced, it is the waste that we produced in our body. And also in the form of heat also, our body gives out some amount of energy. So in aerobic respiration, carbohydrate which we get from the food is converted in 3 steps. First step is glycolysis. In glycolysis, first pyruvic acid is formed, and then that pyruvic acid is converted into acetyl coenzyme A. If energy is being obtained from lipids, so lipids are broken down into fatty acids and directly acetyl coenzyme A is formed. And same happens with proteins. Proteins are broken into amino acids and we can get acetyl coenzyme A. Now acetyl coenzyme A then enters into the Krebs cycle, and the acetyl part of the acetyl coenzyme A is oxidized, and by passing through the electron transfer chain reaction, we get carbon dioxide, water and energy. And this energy that we get is in the form of ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate. So here we have three steps. First was glycolysis, second was Krebs cycle or the TCA, that is tricarboxylic acid cycle, and then we have electron transfer chain reaction, and at the end you get carbon dioxide, water and energy. And all of this aerobic respiration is happening in the presence of oxygen. So for aerobic respiration, oxygen is very important. If oxygen is present, then only aerobic respiration can be performed. Another type of respiration is anaerobic respiration. Now, anaerobic respiration takes place in the absence of oxygen. Many organisms like bacteria, which cannot live in the presence of oxygen, they produce energy through anaerobic respiration. That is, they perform the anaerobic respiration. Even our body also perform anaerobic respiration when we do heavy work or when we exercise. So now anaerobic respiration, in this less amount of energy is produced, as the glucose which is there, it cannot be completely oxidized, and because of which we get less amount of energy. So the glucose is oxidized with the help of glycolysis and pyruvic acid is formed. Now this pyruvic acid which is produced through glycolysis is then converted to different acids, and this is done through a process called as fermentation. Now this happens in microbes. In human body, pyruvic acid which is formed after fermentation, we produce lactic acid. As there is no oxygen, lactic acid is accumulated. In yeast cell, through fermentation, that is pyruvic acid is produced through glycolysis, and through fermentation alcohol is produced in yeast. This is what is anaerobic respiration, which takes place in the absence of oxygen. Now energy can also be produced from other food components, that is proteins. We get 4 kilocalorie of energy per gram of protein. Now when proteins are digested, amino acids are formed. These amino acids are transported to cell, and from these amino acids our body produce proteins. So amino acids, they combine together and proteins are produced for our body. Now here are few amino acids. Now from these amino acids proteins are formed and it is utilized in our body. So in the skin, melanin, you must have heard about melanin. It is very important in our skin, and keratin is also produced. Then in bones, osin is there. It is also used in our cells to form the cell membrane. It is also used to form insulin and trypsin. In the pituitary gland is also useful, in our muscles and in our blood also. So in the form, amino acids can be utilized by the entire body. Another important component is lipids. Now lipids are broken down to produce fatty acids and alcohol. Now fats that is produced, it can be healthy fats also or the dangerous fats also. We get 9 kilocalorie of energy per gram of lipids. Our body, if it has more amount of lipids, it gets stored in our adipose tissue. Vitamins are also essential for our body. Vitamins are of 6 types. Now you have already studied about the types of vitamin. It can be vitamin A, B, C, D, E and K. Now vitamins like riboflavin and nicotinamide are necessary to produce energy. Along with food, our body also requires water. Our body is made up of 60 to 70% of water. Our cell contains 70% of water. Even our blood plasma contains 90% of water. So indirectly you can say that water is an essential nutrient. So along with the food components like carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, vitamin, water is also an essential part of our body. Now, if a person consumes less amount of water, That person can also suffer from problems of indigestion, as water plays an important role in digestion. So, these all components play an important role in production of energy in our body.